Armored Core has been a dormant franchise since early 2012. The last installment, Armored Core 5, first released January of 2012, which was just a few months after the first Dark Souls. Since then, FromSoft has been mastering their craft and building up a fan base. We've had Dark Souls 2 and 3, Bloodborne, Sekiro, and most recently Elden Ring, all of which continuously have been increasing the popularity of FromSoft's games. Of their catalog of games, Armored Core has always been a bit of an outlier in terms of how the games actually played. However, after analyzing IGN's recent interview with Yasunori Ogura, we've been given some clues to how Armored Core 6 will play. So in this video, we are going to pick apart those clues and speculate the type of combat improvements we can expect to see in this reboot of Armored Core. Before we jump into the points made in the interview, I want to review some of the older installments and what they offered. I think it's important to establish a bit of a base and history of the game since a lot of people are going to be experiencing an Armored Core game for the first time. This was mentioned during the interview, but Armored Core has always been a shooter-based game first. The game just offered a lot more in terms of ranged weapons. For example, you had shotguns, assault rifles, Gatling guns, rocket launchers, shoulder-mounted sniper rifles, missile launchers, and just a lot more. In addition to those guns, you also had different damage types with energy and physical-based damage. For melee weapons, you had just energy swords or the famous pile bunker, which was a notoriously difficult to use physical melee weapon. Melee weapons were just much more difficult to use in the older games because, well, for the most part, it was just difficult to get in range in the first place while dodging constant ranged assaults. In most cases, when you finally did get in range, you would simply lunge forward and slash in front of you. There was no tracking, so it made it easy to dodge out of the way of these melee attacks. This was solved somewhat in Armored Core 4 Answer when they added melee weapon tracking when you would initiate an attack. In some cases, the tracking on this felt like it was just a little too much and almost made melee weapons a little too good. This is all to say that melee weapons haven't really had the best track record throughout Armored Core's history. In addition, something that was common with all Armored Core games was your weapons never really comboed together. You would usually just throw on whichever damage type ranged weapons you wanted to use and just unleash bullet hell on your enemies until they take enough chip damage to be defeated. There were no instances of staggering an enemy, which would lead into follow-up attacks. This leads to some limitations in the customization aspect of Armored Core in my opinion. If nothing is comboing together, then you're likely just to throw on whichever weapons have the highest damage values for their damage types. While I might be talking about Armored Core in a slightly negative light here, trust me when I say that the games were still so incredibly fun, and with this interview, we're actually expanding on or fixing some of these issues, which I'm looking forward to. Moving into the actual interview portion here, there are 3 comments that really stuck out to me that we're going to focus on. The first of those, and this is even something that we see in the trailer, are the amount of melee weapons present. It looks like this installment of the game will have plenty of melee weapons with different characteristics. As I mentioned, the previous games only had energy swords and the pile bunker. While we will see those types of weapons return, there was also mention of an energy lance and chainsaw, but we also saw this energy whip. We didn't really get a good look of the weapon animations here, but if this is the lance, it looks like the mech quickly boosts forward to make a stabbing motion. I'm guessing the chainsaw will be a physical melee weapon to add to some variety of the melee damage types, but I wonder how this weapon will actually behave in terms of animations. One thing I did want to note about the clip with the whip is it almost seems like the melee weapons could have a plunging attack animation. It seems a little unclear, but maybe that's just how the whip attacks. For the next point brought up in the interview, and maybe the biggest change to Armored Core, is we could potentially have a poise or stagger system. The lead developer of Armored Core 6 also happened to be the lead developer on Sekiro, so taking some of those lessons learned from Sekiro and implementing them into Armored Core could be a very cool way of advancing the mech combat system. My guess in how this would function is essentially a new stagger stat is introduced. Some armor pieces, primarily the legs I assume, increase your poise to prevent staggering. Tank legs would provide the most poise since they're classified as the heaviest, while something like reverse joint or bipedal legs would have the least poise since they're built more for agility. In addition, you would then have stagger as a stat on weapons. Maybe rocket launchers and shoulder-mounted sniper rifles have the highest stagger damage since they deal the heaviest blows in a single instance, while machine guns deal minimal stagger since you're unleashing a barrage of fire with them. Once an enemy has been staggered, you can then follow up with a powerful melee attack. The final key talking point that was brought up was something mentioning combo attacks. And more specifically, there was this callout of what looks to be an EMP blast with a pile bunker follow-up. It seems like there's going to be an EMP blast which will temporarily immobilize enemies for you to land follow-up attacks. I'm not sure if the only combos would come from this EMP, but it is a great addition nonetheless. But to build on this a little bit more, there was an additional comment about utilizing your full arsenal. There are a lot of weapons to choose from in Armored Core, so I hope that this means that you'll be able to kind of mix and match weapons, and there will be some instances where you can follow up your attacks with other weapon types. For example, maybe my mech utilizes a rocket launcher and a shotgun. The rocket launcher is very difficult to land, but if I get a good shotgun blast in on the enemy, maybe they recoil briefly, allowing me to land a follow-up rocket launcher attack. I always had a bit of an issue in other Armored Core games where taking a big hit from something like a sniper rifle never really phased your mech, and it would just keep moving regardless and have no recoil. But that's going to wrap up this video. This has all been mostly speculation for now, but the way that the game is sounding has me hyped as hell to revisit this amazing series. If you'd like to follow along as I cover more about Armored Core 6, be sure to subscribe to the channel. But this was Goober Troy saying thanks for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next video.